and welcome to I Could Poison You. It's a humorous title for a serious topic. Now, I am a firm believer in picking your own poison. Today's poison is coffee. Actually, the most poisonous thing in here is probably the sugar. But as far as the video goes, today we're not picking a poison, we're picking the topic of antidotes. But overall, I just want to make clear that these videos are not going to be a how-to guide to poison people. But we will be having a serious grown-up discussion about some of the history and the effects of poison, as well as a theoretical discussion about how some of these poisons could be administered. Today's video is about antidotes, which is why I'm willing to share it here, but all future videos will be on Patreon behind a $1 paywall. We're not going to be doing anything illegal or illicit there. I just don't want a child to get a hold of this information and unintentionally harm themselves or someone else. Now, just to be clear, this is a joke mug. Just good humor. I mean, it's true. I could poison someone, but I could also throw a rock at them. It doesn't mean I'm going to do it. And not just because of the moral implications, but also because people know I'm a plant guy, and if someone turned up poison, they would probably look at me and say, hey, don't you know how to, couldn't you poison somebody if you really wanted to? So if I ever did have a situation where I did need to dispose of a person, I would have to figure out some way to kill somebody with baseball statistics or something where they would never point back to me. Anyway, if you do want your own poison mug so that you can drink along with me and also so you can make your coworkers uncomfortable, then I will put a link down below where you can pick one of these up. All proceeds go to me and the stuff that I want to buy with that money. Now, let's get into it. Let's talk about poisons. As they say, the dose makes the poison, and there are a few exceptions where smaller doses become more dangerous than larger ones, but generally that's a true statement. And literally anything could be a poison if you ingest enough of it. Water poisoning is a thing, but we're generally talking about things that become dangerous toward the lower level of exposure. Interestingly, many poisons actually have beneficial medicinal effects in minuscule doses, and many of our herbal and pharmaceutical medicines could rightly be considered poisons if taken outside of controlled dosing. Besides being used as a medicine, poisons have been used in hunting and fishing, and we eat a number of poisonous foods too. Cassava, cashews, and pokeweed all start out poisonous, but are rendered safe through processing. Other foods, such as legumes, often have a mix of nutrients and anti-nutrients or other toxic substances, which we dutifully ignore and eat anyway. And then, of course, there's the case of hot peppers, which we actively encourage to develop higher levels of chemical warfare with which to deploy against us. And we also have a wide variety of susceptibility to poisons from person to person. Urushiol from poison ivy is a good example. Some people can roll in the stuff without any apparent effects, and other people, if they just look at it too hard, they're going to break out in hives. And for those people, mangoes, a member of the poison ivy family, could rightly be considered mildly toxic and can also cause outbreaks similar to that of poison ivy contact, especially when touching the skin of the mango. You could say that we have a complex relationship with poisons. And of course, poisons have been used to get rid of inconvenient humans throughout all of our history. Various strategies have been employed to protect against this, from food tasters to special antidote concoctions, each of which has its limitations. Food tasters can detect certain poisons, but some poisons can be tasteless or they may not have an effect for hours or even days later when it's much too late to do anything. The destroying angel mushroom comes to mind. Likewise, antidotes aren't universally effective. Well, probably not. There is a historic account recording King Antiochus, as recorded by Pliny, and in the concoction called the Thracium of Antiochus, it was reportedly used to counter assassination attempts by poison and to neutralize the venoms of all manner of poisonous creatures. So, what should you do if you or someone that you care about has been poisoned? First, remember that I'm not a doctor, so I'm not actually giving you medical advice, and that's a very important first step. But right after that, you want to call poison control, or go to the hospital, or go to the ER. Really, poisoning is not something that you want to tackle as an inexperienced or even intermediate herbalist, because it's some serious stuff. It can be life-threatening, and that's not the time to experiment with a new herbal concoction. But let's assume that the hospital just isn't an option right now for whatever reason. Maybe the roads are covered in a foot of ice, or there's you're lost in the wilderness, or there's zombies everywhere, whatever. So you can't get to a hospital and you have to do something on your own. What could you do? Step 1, don't panic. Most poisonous plants fall into the category of somewhere between inconvenient to strongly unpleasant. There are a few significantly dangerous ones, but most plant poisonings are not fatal. In fact, I would go so far as to say that the things that we spray onto plants are more dangerous than the plants themselves most of the time. Mushrooms can be a bit scarier, and of course, if you've ingested some kind of random household chemical or prescription medicines, then things can get pretty dicey in a hurry. But still, panicking is not going to help you, it's just going to make you make bad decisions faster. So, take a breath. Assess the situation. What did the person eat or drink? How much of it did they eat or drink? And how long ago did they consume it? You may not always have all of the answers, but the more information you get, the more it's going to help you now, and also paramedics or doctors when you can eventually get this person to a trained medical professional. If the poison was fairly recent, an emetic herb might be useful to flush the poison from the body, and an emetic is an herb that causes vomiting. People used to keep syrup of ipecac around for this purpose. You could also use lobelia, or a lot of mustard can cause the mustard can cause an irritation that can cause you to want to vomit it out. The lobelia is more of I guess technically they're both chemical effects, but anyway, either of those could help. Or there's the old trick of using your finger or a toothbrush and sticking that down into the back of your throat to induce vomiting. If it's been a while, that may not help because it's already too far down to vomit it up, and that may just weaken the person that's been poisoned. You can also ingest activated charcoal or bentonite clay to help absorb and bind up the poison before it's had a chance to enter the body. Just stir it up in some water and swallow it down. Again, that's the sooner that you can get it in, the better. This can also sometimes induce vomiting itself, sometimes. I'm going to include a link to the Mayo Clinic, and that's to a page with dosing information for this. That way, actual doctors are dispensing the medical advice, and I'm not legally liable, and that way I'm not prescribing or diagnosing, and I'm going to stay on the right side of the FDA, and that's always a pleasant thing. If the poison in question affects the liver, I would definitely take some type of liver-protecting herb. My first choice would be milk thistle seed. That's an excellent one for protecting the liver. Some of the really deadly mushrooms work by affecting the liver. Not everything, of course, but some of them. It's almost guaranteed to not make anything worse anyway, right? Even if you don't know what the thing is. I would also include, for me, some horsetail if I thought that heavy metal was involved, heavy metal poisoning. Other detoxification herbs might be helpful or harmful depending on the herb and the poison in question. For example, cholagogues might help to flush the system out and get the poison out faster by stimulating the gallbladder to release bile salts, and that stimulates the contraction of the smooth muscles along the intestine walls. But on the other hand, that could cause dehydration because you're passing things along very quickly, and if the person is not able to take in water and keep it down, that could also be problematic. And speaking of water, if it were me, I would also be trying to drink a lot of water if I could keep it down. This would help to speed things moving through the digestive system to minimize absorption. Plus, by definition, drinking water does not cause dehydration. So it has that advantage. And some of the detoxifying herbs can stimulate dehydration if you're not getting water back in. Also, keep in mind that these are just general steps. There could always be specific situations where any of these could be the wrong thing to do. Unfortunately, real life is complicated. And a lot of the time, dealing with poisons, it really just puts us back in the realm of managing symptoms until the body can deal with it. So you'll want to monitor the person's blood pressure, respiration, heart rate, their temperature, their lucidity or awareness, their vitals, in other words. Make sure to take note of all these things, because if you are able to get that person to a doctor later, all of that information will be really helpful for the medical staff to help figure out what has poisoned them if you don't already know, and so they can know where they are along that process to know how to help them. A note on temperature, by the way. With an illness, a fever is generally unpleasant. It can be scary, but it's rarely ever dangerous. The body has self-regulating processes to keep you from overheating yourself to a dangerous extent. However, with poisons, those safeguards can get turned off, and you can cook yourself with your own fever, so you really have to watch out about that in the case of poisons. So, in summary, get professional help wherever possible. When that isn't possible, do your best to remain calm, minimize the effects of the poison as best as you can, and remember to keep notes about what was consumed, how much, when, any of the symptoms. And once you're able to get that person through to trained medical staff, all that information will be helpful to make sure that everybody comes through the other side all right. In the next video, we're actually going to step into the realm of poisons, and we'll be looking at a plant with an interesting history as a poison, a medicine, and a magical plant. We'll be looking at deadly nightshade, belladonna. That video is available right now for patrons, and the link is in the description. Hope I'll see you there. That's some good poison.